They miss you, yes, they do, but their silence is not a lack of love. It is a battle between desire and fear. A war between the heart that wants connection and the mind that learned long ago that closeness comes with pain. And until you understand this, you may keep questioning your worth, replaying memories, and wondering why someone who felt so connected could disappear so completely. Let me ground you in a truth that may shift everything for you. Avoidance is not absence of feeling. It is an overload of feeling without the tools to handle it. When an avoidant misses you, their body does not interpret longing as something beautiful. It interprets it as a threat. Their nervous system tightens. Their breath shortens. Their mind says, if I go back, I will lose myself. If I speak, I will be exposed. If I feel, I might fall apart. So they do what they learn to do best. They retreat. You see, some people were taught love through safety and reassurance. Others were taught love through inconsistency, emotional withdrawal, or the unspoken rule that needing someone was dangerous. So when real connection appears, it doesn't feel familiar. It feels overwhelming. And here is where wisdom enters. You cannot heal someone by chasing them into their fear. You cannot love someone into readiness by abandoning yourself. Love does not grow where desperation lives. Love grows where truth, strength, and grounded presence reside. Understand this clearly. An avoidant often waits until the emotional storm inside them settles before they act. They may miss you in waves, late at night, in quiet moments, when something reminds them of your laughter, your steadiness, your warmth. But missing you does not immediately translate into action, because action requires courage, and courage requires emotional safety. Now listen carefully, because this is where your power returns to you. Your role is not to convince them of your value. Your role is to embody it. When you stop chasing, when you stop explaining, when you stop trying to be chosen, something shifts energetically, not just in them, but in you. You become grounded. You become aligned. You become whole. And wholeness is magnetic. There is a divine principle at work here. What is meant for you does not require self-betrayal. Love that is real does not ask you to shrink, beg, or wait in emotional limbo. When you choose peace over panic, clarity over confusion, self-respect over longing, you rise into a different frequency. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing them to act is often the moment they feel the absence most clearly. Not because you withdrew to manipulate, but because you returned to yourself. If they come back, they must come back whole, willing, and emotionally present. And if they don't, you will still stand taller, wiser, and more rooted than before. Because you didn't lose them, you found yourself. Remember this. Love is not proven by how much you endure. Love is proven by how deeply you are willing to grow. Stand in truth. Trust divine timing. And never mistake someone's fear for your lack of worth. Thank you for listening. Stay strong, stay aligned, and walk forward, knowing that what is meant to meet you will do so without fear. Avoidants feel deeply, often more deeply than they ever let on, but fear vulnerability more than they fear loss. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, especially when you are on the receiving end of their distance. From the outside, their silence can look like indifference, emotional coldness, or even arrogance. But inside, something very different is happening. There is emotion, memory, attachment, and longing. Yet all of it is filtered through a nervous system that learned early on that closeness is unsafe. For an avoidant, vulnerability is not just emotional openness. Vulnerability feels like exposure, like standing unprotected in front of a world that once disappointed, neglected, or overwhelmed them. Somewhere in their past, they learned that needing someone led to pain, rejection, or loss of control. So they adapted. They became self-reliant, emotionally contained, and fiercely independent, not because they wanted to, but because it felt necessary to survive. When they feel deeply for someone, it activates the very wound they worked so hard to bury. Love doesn't arrive as comfort, it arrives as threat. The deeper the feeling, the louder the internal alarm. Their mind begins to race. What if I lose myself? What if I depend too much? What if I can't escape if this goes wrong? And so, instead of leaning in, they pull back. Not because the connection lacks meaning, but because it means too much. This is why avoidants often appear calm during separation, while the other person is breaking inside. What you see as emotional detachment is actually emotional suppression. They are not free of pain, they are skilled at locking it away. And they will often choose the familiar pain of loneliness over the unfamiliar risk of intimacy. Loss to them feels safer than surrender. Fear of vulnerability also creates a cruel internal contradiction. They crave connection, yet feel safest without it. They want love, yet panic when it becomes real. This inner conflict can lead them to miss someone intensely while doing nothing about it. Acting would require acknowledging their feelings, expressing need, and stepping into emotional uncertainty. And for an avoidant, that feels far more dangerous than silence. It is important to understand that this fear is not conscious in the way logic operates. You cannot reason someone out of a nervous system response. Their withdrawal is often automatic, rooted in years of conditioning. When intimacy increases, their body reacts before their heart has a chance to speak. This is why promises may be sincere in the moment, but distance follows soon after. The fear overrides the desire. What makes this especially painful is that avoidants often judge themselves harshly for these reactions. They may feel shame for wanting you and resentment for needing space at the same time. Instead of asking for reassurance or help, they disappear. Vulnerability would require admitting confusion and fear, and that feels unbearable. So when an avoidant misses you but does not reach out, it is not because you were insignificant. It is because you mattered enough to awaken something they were not prepared to face. They fear vulnerability more than loss, because vulnerability threatens their sense of control, their emotional armor, and the identity they built around not needing anyone. Understanding this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it brings clarity. Their distance is not a measure of your worth. It is a reflection of their internal battle, one where the heart feels deeply. But fear stands guard at the door. Silence from an avoidant is often self-protection, not indifference. This distinction matters deeply, because without it, silence gets interpreted as rejection, dismissal, or emotional cruelty. For someone on the receiving end, the quiet can feel loud, personal, and devastating. Yet for an avoidant, silence is not an absence of feeling. It is a strategy for survival. It is how they regulate overwhelm when emotions rise beyond what they know how to handle. Avoidants learned early that expressing emotion did not lead to comfort. It may have led to dismissal, misunderstanding, or punishment. So they adapted by turning inward. Silence became a shield. When feelings intensify, especially feelings of attachment, longing, or conflict, their instinct is not to reach out but to retreat. Not because they don't care, but because caring feels unsafe. When an avoidant goes quiet, it is often because their internal system is overloaded. They may be flooded with thoughts they cannot organize, emotions they cannot name, and fears they cannot soothe. Speaking would require clarity, and clarity is not available to them in that moment. So they wait. They distance. They convince themselves that space will bring control back. Silence, to them, feels stabilizing. This is where misunderstanding grows. The other person may reach out, ask for reassurance, or seek connection, actions that are natural and healthy. But to the avoidant, these gestures can feel like pressure, even if they are gentle. Pressure triggers their fear of engulfment, the belief that closeness will cost them autonomy or emotional safety. In response, they shut down further. The silence deepens, not because they care less, but because they are trying to breathe. Self-protection also shows up as emotional minimization. Avoidants often tell themselves stories to justify their silence. It's not that serious. I'm better off alone. This will pass. These thoughts are not always true, but they serve a purpose. They reduce emotional intensity. By shrinking the importance of the connection in their mind, they can calm their nervous system. Silence supports this process. What's rarely seen is that silence often hurts them too. They may replay conversations, miss shared moments, and feel the pull of connection while actively resisting it. But reaching out would mean risking vulnerability, admitting they care, admitting they might be affected, admitting they might need someone. And that feels far more dangerous than enduring quiet longing. Silence also protects them from potential conflict. Many avoidants associate emotional conversations with escalation, criticism, or loss of control. Even healthy communication can feel threatening if their past taught them that speaking up leads to chaos. So they avoid the conversation altogether. Silence becomes a way to avoid doing or saying the wrong thing. This pattern can create a painful cycle. The more someone seeks clarity, the more the avoidant withdraws. The more the avoidant withdraws, the more anxious the other person becomes. Both are reacting from fear, but in opposite directions. Without understanding, silence gets labeled as coldness, and in reality it is fear in disguise. Recognizing silence as self-protection does not mean accepting emotional neglect. It means understanding the mechanism behind the behavior. Avoidants are not indifferent, they are overwhelmed. They are not uncaring, they are under-resourced emotionally. Silence is the tool they know, even when it costs them connection. For someone involved with an avoidant, this realization can shift the narrative. Their quiet is not a verdict on your value. It is evidence of their internal struggle. And while compassion is important, so is self-respect. You can understand their silence without abandoning your own need for communication. And emotional presence. Their nervous system associates closeness with danger, not comfort. This association is not a conscious choice. It is a deeply ingrained biological response shaped by early experiences. For many avoidant individuals, emotional closeness once came with unpredictability, criticism, emotional withdrawal, or a lack of consistent safety. Over time, their body learned to stay alert around intimacy. What should feel soothing instead activates stress. When closeness increases, their nervous system shifts into a defensive state. The body reacts first: tight chest, shallow breathing, restlessness, or an urge to escape, long before the mind can rationalize what is happening. To an avoidant, this physical discomfort is interpreted as a warning signal. Their system says, something is wrong, I am not safe, and because the body's alarm feels real, they trust it, even when the relationship itself is healthy. This is why avoidants often pull away after moments of emotional intimacy. A deep conversation, a meaningful connection, or even feeling understood can trigger internal panic. The closeness highlights dependency, and dependency feels threatening. Their nervous system equates being needed or seen with losing control or being hurt. Distance becomes the quickest way to return to equilibrium. Comfort for an avoidant was often found in self-reliance. Being alone felt predictable. Managing their own emotions without relying on others felt safe. As children or adolescents, they may have learned that emotional needs were unmet or burdensome, so they adapted by suppressing those needs altogether. This adaptation works until intimacy challenges it. When someone gets close, it disrupts the balance they worked hard to maintain. Their system doesn't recognize love as safety. It recognizes it as a variable they cannot control. So the body prepares for threat. Fight, flight, or freeze responses activate. Many avoidants choose flight, emotional withdrawal, busyness, or detachment. It is not intentional sabotage. It is regulation. This pattern can be confusing to both partners. The avoidant may genuinely enjoy the connection on a cognitive level while feeling physically distressed by it. They may tell themselves, I like this person, so why do I feel so uncomfortable? Without understanding their nervous system, they may assume something is wrong with the pace or with the other person, rather than recognizing an internal trigger. Over time, this leads to a cycle where closeness and distance alternate. They approach when they feel lonely or disconnected, then retreat when the bond deepens. The nervous system seeks relief, not logic. Distance brings relief. Silence brings calm. Familiar patterns restore a sense of safety, even if they cost intimacy. This also explains why avoidants may downplay emotional experiences after the fact. Once distance is restored and the nervous system settles, the urgency fades. What felt intense before now feels manageable or even unnecessary. They may convince themselves that closeness wasn't that important after all. This isn't dishonesty, it's state-dependent perception. How they feel depends on whether their system is activated or regulated. Healing this pattern requires more than reassurance from a partner. A nervous system that learned danger must learn safety through consistent, low-pressure experiences of connection. This takes time, self-awareness, and often intentional inner work. Until then, closeness will continue to feel like something to survive rather than something to rest in. Understanding this dynamic changes how you interpret their behavior. Their withdrawal is not a reflection of your inadequacy or intensity. It is a biological response shaped by history. Closeness threatens their sense of safety, not because you are unsafe, but because their system has not yet learned that intimacy can be calm, steady, and secure. Missing you can trigger shame, fear, and emotional paralysis in an avoidant, not because the feeling itself is wrong, but because it contradicts the identity they built to survive. Many avoidants pride themselves on independence, emotional control, and self-sufficiency. These traits once protected them. They became the armor that helped them function in environments where relying on others led to disappointment or pain. So when they miss someone deeply, it threatens that armor. Missing someone means acknowledging attachment. Attachment means need. And need, for an avoidant, is often associated with weakness, vulnerability, or loss of power. Instead of experiencing longing as a soft or romantic emotion, they experience it as a failure of control. This is where shame enters. They may judge themselves for caring, for wanting, for being affected. The internal dialogue becomes harsh. Why do I care? I should be over this. I don't need anyone. These thoughts are not truth. They are defenses. Shame is a powerful silencer. When an avoidant feels ashamed of their emotions, they are unlikely to express them. Reaching out would require admitting that the other person still matters. It would require revealing that distance did not erase attachment. For someone who learned to survive by not needing, this feels humiliating. So instead of acting on the feeling, they suppress it. Fear follows closely behind. Missing you can awaken fears of dependency, loss of autonomy, and emotional exposure. They may fear that reconnecting will pull them back into a dynamic where they feel overwhelmed or trapped. Even if the relationship was healthy, the fear is internal, not situational. Their nervous system remembers the cost of closeness, not the comfort. This combination of shame and fear often leads to emotional paralysis. They feel the longing, but every path forward feels dangerous. Reaching out risks vulnerability. Staying silent risks loss. Either option triggers discomfort, so they do nothing. From the outside, this looks like indifference or emotional avoidance. Inside, it feels like being stuck. Emotional paralysis is not a lack of care, it is an overload. The feelings are too big and too conflicting to process easily. They may distract themselves with work, routines, or surface-level interactions to avoid sitting with the discomfort. But the missing doesn't disappear. It lingers in quiet moments, in memories, in unspoken thoughts. This paralysis can also be fueled by self-blame. Avoidants often recognize that their patterns contributed to the distance. Missing you can remind them of moments they withdrew, shut down, or failed to show up. This awareness can intensify shame. Instead of reaching out to repair, they retreat further, believing they've already ruined the chance. The longer this cycle continues, the harder it becomes to act. Time adds pressure. The question, is it too late, grows heavier. Fear of rejection joins the mix. They may assume you've moved on, that you're angry, or that reaching out would be unwelcome. These assumptions protect them from the risk of being turned away. Understanding this dynamic reframes their inaction. It is not that they don't miss you enough. It is that missing you activates emotions they don't know how to hold safely. Shame tells them to hide. Fear tells them to stay still. And emotional paralysis becomes the space where longing exists without expression. This awareness does not mean you must wait or excuse harmful behavior, but it allows you to see that their silence is not empty. It is crowded with emotion, conflict, and unresolved fear, felt deeply but lived quietly. Avoidants wait for emotional safety, not perfect timing. This distinction is subtle but crucial, because from the outside it often looks like procrastination, confusion, or emotional unavailability. People may assume the avoidant is waiting for circumstances to change, for life to settle down, or for some ideal moment to appear. In reality, the delay is internal. They are waiting to feel safe enough in their own body to engage. Emotional safety, for an avoidant, is not the absence of conflict or responsibility. It is the absence of threat. Their nervous system needs to feel regulated before they can move toward connection. If they feel overwhelmed, pressured, or emotionally cornered, even the most loving opportunity will be postponed. They cannot act from chaos. They act only when their internal state feels manageable. This is why avoidants often resurface after long periods of silence, sometimes when the other person has already begun to detach. Once their nervous system settles, through distance, routine, or emotional numbing, they feel calmer. That calm is mistaken for readiness. In truth, it is simply relief. When the internal alarm quiets, they can think more clearly, reflect more honestly, and feel the missing without panic. Avoidants are not waiting for perfection in the relationship. They are waiting for their fear to subside. When fear is high, connection feels risky. When fear is low, connection feels possible. This fluctuation explains why they may express desire one moment and withdraw the next. Their willingness is state-dependent, not based on intention alone. External pressure can delay this process. Deadlines, ultimatums, or emotional demands, no matter how reasonable, can increase their sense of threat. Even well-meaning attempts to gain clarity can feel destabilizing. The avoidance system interprets urgency as danger. Instead of moving closer, they retreat further to restore balance. Emotional safety also involves predictability. Avoidance feels safer when interactions are calm, consistent, and low in emotional intensity. They need time to trust that closeness will not lead to overwhelm. Sudden emotional escalations, even positive ones, can trigger withdrawal. Safety is built slowly, through repeated experiences that contradict their old beliefs about intimacy. This waiting period is often misunderstood as a lack of commitment. In truth, it reflects an internal negotiation between desire and self-preservation. They may want connection deeply, but refuse to move until they feel confident they can stay regulated within it. Acting too soon feels reckless to them, even if from the outside it looks like avoidance. It is important to recognize that emotional safety cannot be forced. No amount of reassurance, explanation, or proof will speed up their readiness if their system is not settled. Safety is felt, not reasoned. This is why avoidants often say, "I don't know what I want," when what they mean is, "I don't feel safe enough yet." Understanding this helps shift expectations. Their timeline is not guided by logic or opportunity, but by regulation. When they do act, it is often because something inside them finally feels stable enough to risk connection. That stability may come from personal growth, time alone, or a gradual rebuilding of trust. However, waiting for emotional safety does not mean waiting forever. There is a difference between patience and self-abandonment. You can respect their process without pausing your life or suppressing your needs. Emotional safety must exist on both sides. While they wait to feel safe enough to step forward, you are allowed to choose environments and relationships where safety is already present. Seeing this dynamic clearly removes confusion. They are not waiting for the stars to align. They are waiting for their fear to quiet, their body to settle, and their inner world to feel safe enough to let someone close. Your growth and grounded energy matter more than chasing or proving, especially when dealing with an avoidant. This truth can feel counterintuitive when you care deeply, because the instinct is often to explain more, give more, try harder, or show them what they're missing. But with avoidant dynamics, pursuit rarely creates connection. It creates pressure, and pressure triggers distance. Avoidants are highly sensitive to shifts in emotional energy. When someone is chasing, over-explaining, or trying to secure reassurance, the avoidant's nervous system often interprets it as demand. Even if the intention is love, it can feel like expectation or obligation. This activates their fear of losing autonomy. The more you try to prove your worth, or the safety of the connection, the more their system braces against it. Grounded energy works differently. It is calm, self-contained, and rooted in self-respect. It does not ask to be chosen, it allows choice. When you focus on your own growth, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you change the dynamic without saying a word. You stop broadcasting urgency. You start embodying stability. And stability is what avoidants lack internally and often respond to externally. Growth also shifts your posture in the relationship. Instead of reacting to their withdrawal with anxiety or self-doubt, you respond with clarity. You know who you are. You know what you need. You don't chase someone who cannot meet you where you stand. This does not mean you become cold or detached. It means you become centered. And centering yourself is not abandonment of the other. It is loyalty to your own well-being. Avoidants often feel safest around people who are emotionally self-sufficient. This does not mean emotionally closed. It means regulated. Someone who can feel deeply without collapsing, who can desire connection without demanding it, who can walk away from uncertainty without bitterness. Your grounded presence becomes an invitation, not a demand. Chasing keeps you stuck in their fear. Growth moves you out of it. When you chase, your energy is forward-leaning, focused on outcomes you cannot control. When you grow, your energy becomes inwardly anchored. You act from choice rather than reaction. This shift is felt, even if unspoken. Another important aspect of growth is discernment. As you become more grounded, you start to see the relationship clearly, not through longing or hope alone. You recognize patterns. You assess whether their behavior aligns with your values. You stop romanticizing potential and start honoring reality. This clarity is empowering, regardless of whether the avoidant returns or not. Ironically, when you stop proving, you often become more attractive. Not because you changed to win them back, but because you became more fully yourself. Avoidants are drawn to emotional steadiness because it offers what they struggle to create, internally. But even if they never act on that pull, your growth ensures that you are not waiting in emotional limbo. This approach also protects you from self-betrayal. Chasing can slowly erode self-esteem. Each unanswered message, each delayed response, each unmet hope can make you question your worth. Grounded growth interrupts that cycle. You invest energy where it can grow, not where it drains you. Ultimately, your growth is not a strategy to get them to choose you. It is a commitment to choosing yourself. If they rise to meet you from a place of readiness and presence, the connection can evolve. If they don't, your grounded energy ensures that you continue moving forward, aligned with your values, and open to relationships that meet you with the same depth and courage you bring. As we come to the end of this message, I want you to pause and breathe in one final truth. Their fear does not define your value, and their silence does not erase the connection that once existed. If an avoidant misses you but is afraid to act, it is not because you were forgettable. It is because you mattered enough to awaken emotions they were never taught how to handle. Your job was never to save them, fix them, or wait endlessly in emotional uncertainty. Your job was to grow, to learn, and to return home to yourself with greater wisdom than before. And if this experience has taught you anything, let it be this. Love that is meant for you will meet you with courage, not confusion, with presence, not prolonged absence. Trust that what is aligned with your highest good will not require you to abandon your peace. When you choose self-respect over chasing, clarity over hoping, and growth over stagnation, you step into your true power. Whether they find the courage to step forward or not, you will already be standing on solid ground. Some connections are lessons, some are seasons, and some are invitations to rise. This one, whatever its outcome, has shown you your strength, your depth, and your capacity to love without losing yourself. Carry that forward. Let it refine you, not harden you. Thank you for allowing this message to meet you where you are. Thank you for listening with an open heart. And most of all, thank you for choosing to grow rather than shrink in the face of uncertainty. Goodbye for now. Walk forward with clarity, peace, and the quiet confidence that what is truly meant for you will never require fear to lead the way.